Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episodes 21 and 22 of the Untamed. So, full disclosure, right before Christmas break, right before New Year's, I got some recording done early, and then I took some days off from recording to celebrate with family and celebrate the holidays. So, I've taken a little break from the Untamed for about a week, and so it's been a full week, but I am ready to come back and watch the new episodes. And we left off on a great note, right? We left off with the Yiling Patriarch being introduced. Wanji's not happy about it. Shang thinks it's okay because as long as it's getting the job done and helping out defeating the WENS, it's all right. But yeah, Zahn does such a good job as WuXian that it's really the difference between him as WuXian and him as the Yiling Patriarch is much more pronounced. I feel like in the Donghua, and maybe because I haven't seen season 1 of the Donghua in a while, but I feel like in the Donghua it's a lot more subtle and it's a lot less noticeable, I think, than it is in the Untamed. But I like it here in the Untamed. One, because it's built up to it. Like episodes 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 and 19 all built up to him becoming the Yiling Patriarch. And even the Turtle Cave before then, it's all built up to this moment. So it doesn't feel forced. It feels very natural and like it was coming. But also because it is a distinct change. And Wanji's actor Yibo does a really good job of portraying Wanji noticing that change and being like, oh, this isn't right. And I've just gotten to the part of the novel. I've just read the chapter. I just got done reading chapters 54 and 55 last night. The part of the Turtle Cave there in the novel. And in the novel, after WuXian comes up from having the sword and everything in the lake, Wanji notices that there's a difference in him because he's had that sword for so long and that resentful energy has started to cycle in him. Well, now he's been in the burial mounds. Now that resentful energy has really gotten into him and he's channeling it. And so it's cool to see Wanji notice it and Wanji not be okay with it. But because of the circumstances, no one else but Wanji seems concerned. They're all like, oh, this is to our advantage, right? But we know how it ends up going. So the last episode was really, really well done. And I liked the introduction of the Yiling Patriarch. Chow and Zhao, man, and Zulu. Just peace up, A-Town, bye. That was very creepy. I liked the way that they got around the censorship, where they made it just, instead of it being like supernatural, it was just creepy. The eyes, somebody said the eyes in the cranberry sauce. I was like, it freaked me out because it was surprising. I wasn't expecting it. But yeah, like Chow, like clawing his face up, and then Zhao with the nails and the red. It was well done. I liked episode 20 quite a bit. So it's been about a week, so we're going to follow up now. I got my paper out to take notes to do episodes 21 and 22. So I'm very, very curious what all is going to go down. Like I said, it's been a while. I have intentionally not rewatched season 1 or season 2 of the Donghua because I knew I was going to be reading the novel. I knew I was going to be watching the Untamed. So I wanted it to be as fresh as it could be going into this. And right now, the Untamed is a little bit ahead of where the novel is. So I feel like I'm in a good spot for everything. I feel like getting to the novel last is important, and then the Untamed is following the Donghua. So I don't quite remember exactly what happens next from the Donghua. It's been a while. I know there's stuff that takes place in between Yanli's death and now, like him interacting with Ning and Qing, but I don't quite remember everything. And we have the whole thing with the Yin Iron. There's extra Untamed only plot threads, and we haven't done Yi City yet in here. There's a lot of stuff left unsaid still, and we're not even halfway through. So we're getting close to being halfway through the series. Close, but no cigar, right? So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen, what's going to go down. Because in the Donghua, Zhao dies in the city like she does here in the Untamed. But in the Donghua, Chow and Zulu die like out on the battlefield with Wanji and Chang. And it ends with Wanji like going his separate ways from WuXian, and then there's like a time skip. So we kind of got the hints of WuXian and Wanji going their separate ways, but it wasn't finished. So I'm curious to see how the Untamed does it. But I've talked enough. It's 5 minutes in. Let's find out, shall we? So yeah, we are going to start episodes 21 and 22 of the Untamed, and we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Okay. I felt like I liked episode 21 a lot. I liked episode 21 an awful lot. And episode 22 was good. The YAO reveal was wonderful. I was like, oh yes, that was perfect. That was perfect, because I've just read that part of the novel. That was perfect. But the last 5 minutes of that episode 22, it drug. I was like, get to the point, WuXian. Use your resentful energy or something. It was slow. I was like, come on. And I get that they're building it up, and I liked some of the build up, but I was like, Untamed. You had a good pace. Don't ruin it, right? Man, these episodes though. I think something that I really like about these last few episodes, especially with the Yiling Patriarch, is that it's so funny that there is an aspect of it where people are not comfortable with WuXian. You see, because the Donghua happens so quickly. The Donghua happens in such a compact fashion, and I've not gotten to this part of the novel yet, so I don't know how to compare it to the novel, and so I can't, don't spoil me, but I can't compare it to the novel yet, and I don't want spoilers because I'm going to get to it. But in the Donghua, I'm just comparing Donghua to Untamed at this point, and then the parts of the novel I have read. So in the Donghua, because it's so compact, a lot of the stuff with the Yiling Patriarch, they show off screen. You don't get to see the whole thing of the council meeting and WuXian being awkward. You don't get to see that. You don't get to see so much Yanli worrying about WuXian saying you're different. You don't get to see as much of Wanji panicking, and you don't get to see all these characters are worried about WuXian and they notice that he's changed, but they don't express that because in the Donghua you don't have time. So it just cuts from point to point to point. And you get the idea that Chang is okay with WuXian because it's helping them to defeat the WENS. So it's a means to an end. So he doesn't care about WuXian's condition now in the Donghua because it's a means to help them. But here Chang is somewhat concerned. But because of everything going on, Chang's being the clan leader, he just doesn't seem time to focus on it. And that kind of gets relegated to Yanli and Wanji worrying the most. But other people notice it. And I like that this series builds on that. It doesn't make it's not like WuXian becomes the Yiling Patriarch and everybody's all hunky-dory about it. There are people worried about his condition, and you do slowly see WuXian is different. That's the thing. Zahn plays him different. Because when we flash back on the rooftop with him and Wanji talking, he's a totally different person. His attitude, his demeanor, his conversation, his tone, it's all different. And here it's so much darker and gloomier. And what gets me is that Zahn puts on the smile. He does a little smirk. He's does a smirk. But it's a persona. It's fake. It's not the real WuXian smile. It's just a dark smirk. And he's like, I'm WuXian still. And it's you're different. It's so crazy. I love the reunion with Yanli and Chang at the beginning of episode 21, though. That was so good. Them just crying and with each other and showing that they care about each other. It was so, so well done. I loved it. And WeiSing shows up. I like that this series, it gives us little crumbs of WeiSing all the way through. Even the parts doesn't really have a lot to do, he's there and behind the scenes. It's funny because he shows up. Him showing up to greet WuXian shows how much WeiSing cares about WuXian, and then he worries about him. And then you have when he sees them off. You see that when they're in the council room, there's WeiSing with his little fan. It got me, that fan. I would have been, if I was in the Untamed, I would be WeiSing because I would have that fan the whole time and just be sitting there fanning. I'd be using a prop the entire time, right? And then I like that Chang tries to say something along the lines of Wanji had been looking for WuXian, but he doesn't want to bring up Wanji because it's kind of a sore subject because they just had their first argument, But and then Wanji crying and being concerned. He is concerned about WuXian, and I talked in the reaction, but I'm like, there's gay panic Wanji that's really funny, but then there's heartbroken, in love, pining Wanji, and it's so bittersweet because you love to see Wanji express his emotions, but it's heartbreaking at the same time. They also established in episode 21 the little bits and pieces of Chang and WeiSing's friendship, and I'm glad that they show that too, right? Because that comes back later when WeiSing is against YAO, the friendship that WeiSing has with Chang and with WuXian. But the conference, when those guys, especially that one guy that was with the Jin clan, I wonder if he's the uncle figure that gets the scars later and is the one that calls WuXian out on the bridge when Xichen dies. I wonder if that's going to be the same guy. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if it was the same guy. It wouldn't. But yeah, So the opinions of these men being swayed so easily, like at first they're all like, oh, WuXian took out Chao, isn't that great? And then the more they get to talking about it, they're like, well, maybe he used like suspicious tricks to do it, like suspicious ways to take out Chao, and wasn't it, maybe it was vicious and malicious. Like their opinions sway so easily, and WuXian's just kind of like over it. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Also, I want to note that Yanli and Xichen are like the biggest Wangji shippers. Like all of episode 21, Yanli was constantly like, you want to see your friend Wanji, don't you? And I was like, yes, he does. And Xichen's like, you're worried about WuXian, aren't you? And I'm like, yes, he is. it's like those two are like the biggest shippers, and I love them for it. But yeah, everybody keeps asking about where's his sword. WuXian, why don't you have a sword? It makes sense that the Ni clan is so adamant about it because swords are their life. It's like, what, you don't have a gun? Why not? It's like, you know, they're like the NRA, but in this world. No, not really. But it's a bad comparison. But they are like obsessed, like, where's your sword? And even later on, they establish they're like, oh, it's a symbol of honor to have your sword. Where, and even when Wanji says, where's Suibian? I'm like, when Wanji's asking you directly where your sword is by its name. And I like that little tidbit that Wanji calls it Suibian. He says, where's Suibian? But the other guys say, where's your sword? Because it was established in the novel and in the Donghua that they don't want to call it Suibian because they think, it was established in the novel, they don't want to call it Suibian because they think that's an awful name, so they just say your sword or that sword, but Wanji calls it by his name because he doesn't think it's a foolish... It's funny because Wanji was the first one to like call WuXian out for naming it Suibian, and in the end he calls it by name and he's unaffected by it. But yeah, so... but yeah, WuXian tells Yanli that having no sword is his version of growing up, and that he's not in the mood to carry it, and it's like, he just doesn't want to admit he doesn't have a golden cord. It's like, because he can't use the sword if he did. So just not having it is good enough, right? That'll keep people from asking him to use it if he just doesn't have it with him. And the idea of the burial mounds and channeling the resentful energy and using Wanji's techniques, it looked like the like concentration circle and the meditation to like keep the resentful energy from taking him over completely. Like that was good. That was a nice addition, him admitting that to Wanji later on. But the flute rejecting Yanli, I didn't see that coming. I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, the flute using resentful energy against Yanli, and the fact that WuXian can hold it all the time just shows how much that resentful energy has like infiltrated his body when like Yanli just touched it and like shocked her back. And bless her heart, Yanli trying to justify it when she's like, oh, it rejected me, just like Xichen. Like she tries to justify it through something she knows. And it's like, oh girl, no, you're kind of right, but not really. It's like, that was such a good moment. And then naming it Xichen. Xichen. I forget what Xichen means. Y'all have to remind me in the comments. I forget what that means. I've forgotten what that means. But yeah, 3 months. 3 months with all that resentful energy. Kind of crazy. And then yeah, that fake smile. WuXian just puts on that fake smile throughout this entire set of episodes. That just the fake WuXian smile. It's not our chaotic gremlin. It's definitely different, and she calls him out on it. But yeah, she's concerned for him. Yanli's concerned for him. Wanji's concerned. Even Chang is concerned. They're all worried about him gathering all this resentful energy and that it has changed him and he's different. So yeah. We got Xichen and the uncle complaining, who I sang in his fan in the conference. I loved that. The WENS being beaten. Oh, yeah. So I thought that we were already getting to the WENS and Ning's death. I thought that's where we were going. When that scene started, I was like, I'm looking at my notes here. When that scene started, I was like, oh, are we already here? No, that was the preamble. It was just to give us a little foreshadowing that WuXian sees Qing and her grandma being carried off. And I don't think he recognized it was her, but she recognized him. But the idea that they were being taken away, because in the Donghua, it's the Jin clan that has Qing and her grandma and Ning. But we're not there yet because those weren't Jin clan members. Now, I'm assuming they're taking them to the Jin clan and then Daddy Jin's going to put them to work. That's what I'm guessing. But we've not got to that part yet. But that was a nice little bit of foreshadowing, and also a bit of foreshadowing her saying that Ning is not with them, but that they're going to find him. I'm like, okay, it's setting stuff up, and I like that the show is doing that. It's setting stuff up for later. I'm like, okay, cool. That all makes sense. Great. But yeah, everybody confused. And then, yeah, WuXian's like, give me a month, I'll figure it out. And they're all like, I love that moment because you had Wanji looking super concerned, like, I know where this is headed and I know what you're doing and I don't like it. You had Chang being like, I don't know what to say, but it's awkward. And then I love Xichen just being like, Xichen being like Sherlock Holmes in these episodes, just trying to figure it all out, right? But that conversation he has with Wanji afterwards that Xichen has is probably one of my favorites so far in the series. It's such a little scene, but it's basically giving Wanji, it's like the seed is planted for Wanji of why he can give WuXian his trust and his friendship. Because Xichen says that he searched the entire Gusu library for a distinct, definitive set of right versus wrong, a set of rules, and he couldn't find any. That they've made up all these 3,000 rules for Gusu, because like in the real world, there are no set rules. There is no definitive right versus wrong. I love that he says that it's within ourselves to know deep intentions of others. So he's basically he's planting the seed for Wanji to say that even though WuXian does all these things with resentful energy, it's coming from a place of good. And he's wanting to do good and help others. And so it will give Wanji the strength to believe in WuXian and have faith in him. And it's like, I loved that scene. I just loved it. And yeah, Xichen and Chang, they know that WuXian and Wanji are into each other. Like they glance at each other at one point like, our brothers, huh? It's like, yeah, and then WuXian to Wanji, where's Sweebian? And WuXian not wanting to say, but I absolutely love the conversation in episode 22 that starts out of WuXian and Wanji on the rooftop having, and WuXian thanking Wanji and telling him to use the calming technique and to help him meditate and keep the resentful energy at bay in the burial mounds. And he has his flute now. He's like, my flute's going to let me control it. And the conversation that WuXian has with Wanji right after that kind of reaffirms what Xichen was telling him. Because WuXian's like, I'm not meaning any ill intent. I can control it. I'm just going to use my powers for good. And Wanji's like, I don't think it's going to work, but you've got the right idea. And when Wanji said, let me help you, and WuXian's like, okay. It's just setting up. And then Wei Sang sending them off. It was so good. I loved it. So then, yeah. Then we had that long battle between Xichen and the lava people. The lava men that can turn others. Yeah, it just, God, yeah, it took forever. What did I put down here? I was trying to read my own notes. That, yeah, it took forever for him to get over there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Xichuan's battle there. To get past, yeah. I do like that they're giving Xichen more to do in this show. He just doesn't just come out of nowhere. But at what cost? And then, yeah, YAO with the WENS. That moment that we saw him, like, standing off to the side, they want you to think it's Yang. But the moment he spoke, I was like, that's YAO. And it's like, yes, I love it. So then, and then as soon as we had that moment, Mingshu's like, oh, I'm going to go assassinate Ruhan. And I was like, I just read this in the novel. It's going to be great. So then, yeah. And then we had the whole thing with Xichen and getting the map from YAO. Of course he got the map from YAO. They haven't told us outright, but we know from the novel and from the Donghua that, yeah, that's where he got it from. But before we get to Xichen's whole thing with the map painter and his friend, we had the whole thing with Xichen and WuXian. But Xichen was kind of being a prick because, yeah, he definitely spoke out of turn, hurt Yanli's feelings when she was just trying to be nice to him and has been being nice to him this entire time. I was like, Xichen, you were kind of a prick. It was kind of on Xichen in that moment. WuXian threw the first punch, but it was on Xichen just being awful to Yanli. Like, there was no reason for that. And you kind of get the idea at the end of the scene that Xichen does feel kind of bad for how he treated her, because he kind of looks off like, I was being a dick. That was like his look when he looked back, and it's like, you were. And so, but WuXian was being very risky because he not only like straight up punched Xichen, but he like was going to fight with him. I'm like, dude, you don't have a golden core. You could have been killed if Wanji hadn't interfered. And then Mian, bless her heart, Mian's like, am I your only friend, Xichen? She just steps in to try to be damage control. I'm like, I feel bad for Mian. I really like her in this series. I'm sad. I get sad because I do really love the Mian interactions in this. And I'm reading the novel now, too, at the same time. And we're just like, I just finished the chapters on the Turtle Cave. But Man's not really in that as much, and I kind of feel bad. I wish she was in the novel more. And so that's one thing about the Untamed I really like, is their inclusion of her more into the story. But yeah, Xichen being all secret keeper over here with the secret identity of clearly not YAO that made the map for him and is his friend and his confidant. Okay. And keeping his identity a secret. But here's the thing. If I hadn't read the novel and watched the Donghua already, that I wouldn't have guessed it would have been YAO. I don't think I would have. I think I would have thought it was Yang. But because I knew it was coming, I got really excited and was like, oh, it's YAO. Yes, yes. But man, so YAO taking the customer service smile to like devilish levels. That smile and him looking so dark. In the audio drama, when we get to the part of YAO talking to the Wing Clan people, his voice like gets deeper and it's much more menacing. And it does that a little bit in these episodes. And I was like, whoa, seeing YAO just there. But again, that whole conversation that Wanji and Xichen have, where Jishin's like, you can't just judge somebody, even if they're doing some horrible things. They have good intentions in mind. That applies to WuXian for Wanji in the moment, but it also applies to YAO for Xichen. Like YAO, that whole conversation with Wanji justifies his feelings towards YAO 100%. After listening to that, I was like, oh, this philosophy is exactly why you stick up for YAO. It makes total sense. Total sense. But yeah, I also like to note that in this whole during this entire battle sequence, Wanji was not dirty once. There was maybe like a speckle of blood on one of the robe capes. That was it. Not a smidge of dirt. Man has to look glorious 24/7 while fighting. But also, WuXian was fighting with a flute. He didn't have a sword. He didn't have a golden core. He was literally fighting with just a flute that had resentful energy in it. That's impressive. I gotta give him props. But yeah, WuXian's like, we need to fight back dirty. This is not working. We're going to end up getting hurt if we don't fight back through a different means. And Wanji he's like, what do we do? Do we run? And Wanji's like, no, we fight. And so WuXian's like, okay, then I'm going to do things my way if you're going to make me fight. And it's like, I don't know if that's exactly what Wanji wanted. But Wanji still looks concerned through all this. I think Wanji looks very, very concerned. Chang was like, okay, we're doing something. And Xichen, I love Jishin's expression all this. He was like Sherlock Holmes, like, what is this? What are we doing? What's happening? Like, he had a very inquisitive expression. Also, right before WuXian and Wanji had that conversation back in episode 21, I didn't mention this from my notes, but I just glanced over and saw it. But when he thought that Wanji was telling Yanli about him in the supervisory office, like, that was such a scene. I was like, oh, are you really telling her? But Wanji's not a gossip. That's not his nature. So it makes sense he was just trying to comfort her. He wasn't trying to get her all worked up about WuXian. But yeah, holy cow. Yeah, these episodes were really, really good. The end battle was a little drawn out, but I'm hoping that I told you all at the beginning of this reaction, I couldn't remember what happened. It's because the Night City is kind of rushed, I feel like, in the Donghua. In the Donghua, the Night City chapters are a little bit rushed. And I've not gotten to this point in the novel, so I don't know how the novel does it, but I've not gotten there yet. But I feel like they were a little bit rushed, and they drew them out in this set of episodes, but they drew them out a little bit more than usual. Like, for the Untamed, for the most part, has a very clean pace. And this was one of the few times that I felt like something was drug out in this show, and this last battle was definitely one of those moments. So hopefully, though, because we've got Mingzhu and YAO, we have the setup with Ching and her grandmother and Ning. We've got that set up. We've got Yanli and Zixuan set up. We've got the one guy that I'm sure is going to yell at WuXian on the bridge set up. We've got all this set up in these 2 episodes of things to come. And I'm hoping that next episode, if we get to the conclusion where YAO kills Ruhan, I'm waiting for that, where he kills Ruhan, if that happens in this series like it does in the Donghua and in the novel, I'll be curious to see that too. But we got lots of setup, and now next set of episodes is just going to be to see how does the series do it? How does it go about getting the job done? So I'm very curious. But these episodes were great. Zahn and Yibo. But also Chang's actor. Chang's actor is really good too. I commented on it throughout the reaction, but someone noted that Chang is like a theater actor. Ever since y'all said that, it's so obvious. I mean, I did like plays in college, like very amateur stuff, like nothing big. But you can tell if you've ever done theater before, like when you're on stage, you have to exaggerate your expressions and be really expressive because you're performing to an audience that's, you know, in a room with you, not like through a screen where they can see you up close. So you've got to be really expressive in order for that acting to reach those audience members. So knowing that, it makes so much sense now that you watch Chang act. You're like, his facial expressions, his movements, it's very dynamic. I'm like, I appreciate Chang a lot more the last couple episodes knowing that. So knowing that. But him, Xichen, or Xichen, Wanji, Zan as WuXian, like Yanli's actress, like they're all so good. And it's just great acting this episode. Very good acting indeed. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below because these were two really good episodes. And so yeah, we'll be doing episodes 23 and 24 next. Fun times. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, so leave a comment if you want. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episodes 23 and 24 of The Untamed. Bye.